May the Force be with you. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. For this video, we are going to discuss Ahsoka, the first season. Oh my gosh, it has been a thrill to review each of these episodes. It's probably one of my favorite Star Wars series so far. Akram, let's get your thoughts on this series.
Yeah, so links down below. You could check out our episode-by-episode reviews. And for the most part, I think we were pretty fair with this series. There were a lot of highlights and I think a lot of callbacks that fans would just be joyous about. And I think for sure the show is one of the solid shows in a really small category of like great shows in Star Wars, unfortunately. And this does feel like just a mini series. It won't come back, and maybe that's for the best. There's perhaps new possibilities in the future. I think a great show, you have to respect the characters from old, but also introduce new things to bring into the Star Wars universe. Dave Filoni always has that going for him.
For sure. Yeah, definitely what you said is very true. It pays homage to projects that have come before. Obviously, Clone Wars, Rebels were big influences on the show. But even calling back to some of the prequel, some of the original trilogy lore, it's a great encompassing show altogether. And it doesn't manage to actually, I feel, take away from Ahsoka's story in a way, because I feel like Boba Fett's story, it kind of got lost in translation with, Mando joining in and all these other elements. With this show, I feel like it still manages to be about Ahsoka, but also kind of like Ahsoka's like pass on what you'll learn, right, with Sabine. So I think this show was beautiful in the way that they crafted the story and the legacy of, Anakin, the Jedi, the Rebels crew. Just great homages altogether.
Yeah, I agree, because maybe they learned their lesson from the Book of Boba Fett, because they went from the Book of Boba Fett to the Book of Eli to the Book of Job,
the Book of Luke,
and then a DLC Cyberpunk, Phantom Liberty. So all before we get to Boba Fett, and yeah, I think they learned. They gave a lot of generous screen time to a lot of these characters, because again, this is a callback to Star Wars Rebels. We don't get much in Star Wars continuity that respects Star Wars Rebels. I mean, we had that Star Wars Squadrons game, and I had Hera. We have like little things here and there, but for the most part, this was like, I think, the ultimate continuation of that story, and I think they did it beautifully. And they did something unique too, where these characters grew over time. They changed a little bit, especially most notably Sabine. She changed over time. There were some hints that perhaps, that's why Ahsoka kind of stopped training her, was because she could probably lead it down a dark path, maybe as Anakin has, which is understandable, because Mandalorians for the most part sometimes are hot-headed, and especially Sabine, she's really unique in that bunch. I think the one thing that bothered me from the show was, I feel like if you're gonna go all out, just go all out. And I wish we did see Zeb. I think that's going to always be a criticism that everyone will have, is Zeb. And then I also think they botched the actual ending, where you could have just had Kanan there just for sentimental value. It still ended on a high note because everyone loves Hayden Christensen. Another thing also, the way how the show ended and the way how this set up so much for Star Wars in the future, it seems like for sure they're going to try to step away from the Skywalker saga, and seeing Anakin there, the guy who actually started everything, made everything go downhill. Maybe this is the last time we might see Anakin. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, no, it's like we saw him in Kenobi, and then now we see him in this show. So I feel like when it's appropriate, I like seeing Anakin, right? It makes sense for Kenobi, and then for Ahsoka, obviously, it makes sense. But then it makes me feel like, why didn't we see him, when Ahsoka was with Luke, right? Like I said, it depends on the context of what the story is, right? I don't get me wrong, I love to see Anakin in 100 more episodes, right? But it has to make sense within the story. And perhaps, as we saw in the last episode, we saw Anakin's Force Ghost. So maybe it's not the end of his story. Maybe he still has more to teach Ahsoka, or to say to Ahsoka, or maybe even to Luke. Who knows? Maybe we'll see Luke in a successor series or something when they band together to face Thrawn, because it feels like Thrawn is going to be a galaxy wide threat now, and I don't know if that will entail probably the premise for the future movie that they have planned of the Mandoverse, because it seems like now Thrawn is like the ultimate threat to everybody now. Or maybe it's something else, I don't know, but for sure I'd love to see Anakin back again, and I think, you know, this show was also just a great homage to Hayden and a great love letter to Hayden, and it's really you know, something to, you know, say thank you to, of course, to Hayden Christensen. I know he had a lot of backlash during the prequels, so I think this show is just a great thank you to him. I mean, saw images of him crying at one point because everybody said, "Oh, I love you, Hayden." So I think it's how the fans generally feel about, you know, his performance and bringing him back into the canon.
Well, I like what you said, because I feel that this show is more about beginnings rather than endings, and this is really unique. We don't really see that in Star Wars. A lot of times we just see closing of chapters and then we're going to move on to the next chapter, which will ultimately lead to the next chapter is actually the end. And for this, it's like, it seems, you know, I'm pretty damn sure this is just the beginning of something a lot more bigger in scale. And so perhaps this is their way of bringing back Hayden. They're using him as a Force ghost, and maybe he could become the new old Ben. And I think when you put things together and you kind of see him in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, and it's a love letter to, in a way, Revenge of the Sith, where I think that was a stronger performance, and there were so many memorable moments in that, and then just that anger and that feeling of betrayal. They display that in Obi-Wan Kenobi, but for this, it seems like more this is a love letter to a hypothetical Hayden if he was in Clone Wars. And there was something really inspiring about that, because he never was in Clone Wars. So to see him don that armor, and it just seems like, okay, in a way, he's like this new actor. He's reformed, and so he's cleansed, and we do see that also. I think Ahsoka and Anakin, they have a lot in common, and I think they're both cleansed in their own ways. And we see Ahsoka donning the white Ronin armor, which is really cool as well. As a Ronin, you could travel wherever you want to. You're not really upholding to the laws of the land, I'd say.
But also it matches her lightsabers too, in a way.
It matches her lightsabers like that. Yeah, it just brings it all together, because
like purity almost.
Yeah, exactly. And I find you know, the colors in Star Wars really interesting as well, because everything has to mean something. There's just this unseeing eye. There's this force that we cannot see, literally. And I find it interesting that Sabine unlocked her force powers, and she has the green lightsaber color, which is more for like people who's like more in tune with the force. And I find it really interesting that Ezra, as a callback to Kanan, but I mean, he was really close with the Force, and now he has a blue lightsaber color. It's just showing like there's new beginnings, there's new paths that we could take, and that's inspiring.
Well, also, if you think about it, in a way, it's kind of transparent of Ahsoka. So Ahsoka's first lightsaber color was green in the Clone Wars. So
true.
In a way, it's an homage to Ezra, of course, that she has his lightsaber. But it's also an homage to Ahsoka, because you know, her first lightsaber is green. So I think that's an interesting parallel too.
Sure, and her lightsabers turned blue, and then next, and then she eventually lost her lightsaber, and now she's carrying a sword, which is actually pretty cool. That kind of ties into the Ronin thing, because now she has a sword, so as a second weapon or whatever. So you have a lightsaber and you have a Dathomir sword. That's pretty cool.
She's gonna be the new Mando now. She's gonna collect them all.
That's pretty cool.
It's like RPG or some shit.
Yeah, and Master Kuai Liang, whatever his name is, Hu Yang, he's yeah. Well, I feel like and we already said our piece about episode 8, but just to top this off, I feel like, again, everything's about a new beginning. The show felt like that. There was a lot of locations they traveled to, and it just seems really refreshing in Star Wars, because sometimes Star Wars feels like really repetitive in a sense with the planets they may visit. And with this, you have Hu Yang is there. He could perhaps make new lightsabers for, I don't know who they're going to find. Maybe they could train the rat horses or whatever in the ways of the Force.
The whoever's going to wield.
Yeah. Or unless Hu Yang just makes, he's just a mechanic or something, and that's his sad life or whatever.
But Hu Yang as a character too, I thought was great to bring back into the series live action. and to bring David Tennant back for the voice was amazing. And
Yeah.
Hugh Yang doesn't even feel like a droid to me at times. I've never seen a droid have so much faith in the Force. It's just interesting to me. It's like this creature that's like supposed to be made of like computers and logic has a belief in this higher power, right?
Yeah, no, that's really cool. He reminds me a little bit of R2D2. If R2D2 can speak, I kind of feel like he'll be a lot more rough with his words rather than like Hu Yang, who's like just a sweetheart. But I feel like they have a lot in common, and you can only get that when you hung around a lot of Neo Jedis and stuff. Let me ask you, what did you think of Baylan and Shin?
Good question. Well, first of all, rip to Ray Stevenson. Phenomenal performance. Oh my God, it made me miss him even more watching this show. But man, to have this as his last role, go out with a bang, I think it was phenomenal. And yeah, interesting dynamic. And it's funny, especially talking about the Ahsoka and Sabine relationship, right? Because, they're supposed to be the good guys, right? But they have a very strained relationship. And to see Baylan and Shin, even though they're the bad guys, they feel like they've been connected for so long, right? And just their introduction from the first episode, I thought was amazing. Even their lightsaber color is not pure red; it's kind of like this orangey tinge. So it's like they haven't fully converted to Sith, but they're still practitioners of the dark side. And it's always just have fun to bring back some dark Jedi once in a while, right?
Yeah.
But they were amazing. I can't wait to see more of them, especially now that they seem divided in the last episode. I wonder where their paths lead now, or perhaps will their paths recross again? Because it seems like they have different ambitions. It seems like Shin, I guess, kind of wants power, but also kind of like freedom. And Baylan is like trying to rediscover, I guess, the history of the Force or something. But yeah, great characters in my opinion. How about you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they left it really. Everything is like left open ended in the show, and I really like that. I think that's clever to introduce new things, and I think I hope that there's no turmoil between these two characters. I hope that, of course, they're going to be both extremely different, probably in the future. We talk a lot. We keep talking about, which is funny, episode 8. And then we talk about these characters and what leads up to episode 8. And then we talk a lot about the future. And I think that's what this show really encompasses, is that it's the travel, many ways that you can travel to far off locations that may seem impossible. And that's exactly fate. And there's something clever about that. And I don't know, some shows, it's hard because you could make something really poetic, but it wouldn't really come across the tongue. I don't know what I'm saying. It wouldn't really be that great for certain average like moviegoers or showgoers or whatever. They don't really want to go through all that work. But I feel like the show actually has something that's it's a gem and it's really special, and for many purposes. And so, yeah.
Oh, well, great points.
But what also, I want to get your thoughts also on, just let's focus on, rather than episode 8, let's also focus on the earlier half, especially because there were some notable moments, especially action sequences and stuff like that. But overall, what did you think of like the early episodes? Were you hooked from the
from the first
beginning?
episodes? I knew this was going to be a great show. Well, first of all, runtime was much longer, and it's much well deserved. You don't even feel the runtime; it goes by so fast. But there's so much weaved into each episode that makes you stick around, and by the time you finish it, you're like, "Oh my God, what did I just watch?" And it's like you want more. It's like you're craving the next episode already. So I think, yeah, the first couple episodes, I think everybody can agree that this is probably like one of the best Star Wars series that they've put out so far, other than The Mandalorian. And it feels like Star Wars. There's something about it. It pays homage, like I said, to the previous movies and shows. And I think what we talked a little bit earlier about, like, how Star Wars projects tend to create other Star Wars projects. And I think that's one of Dave Filoni's strengths, is that when he creates something, he always thinks about the future and doesn't always toss characters or subplots in the trash, right? You can kind of expand your lore by keeping certain characters around. And that's what I love about this series. It feels like such a great continuation in live action, right? It's easy to bring live action into animation. It's hard to do the reversal of that. So I think this show did a really good job of expanding on Ahsoka, expanding on the Rebels, and just making the characters feel very lived in, and their portrayals on screen. I think the actors did an amazing job. It didn't feel like I had to like nitpick certain things. It just like, even like Hera, like Mary Elizabeth Winstead, like she was amazing as Hera. And even like young Jason, like you felt like they were actually like mother and son. But any other thoughts you had on this show?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm not gonna lie, I actually think, now looking back, honestly, the first 2 episodes were great, but if you actually look at the bigger picture, I could see why some people maybe had their criticisms. I think the show is stronger when it's, I don't want to call it nostalgia baiting, because I kind of feel bad about saying
fan
that.
service.
Fan service is good, but it has to feel warranted and deserved. And I always remembered what Dave Filoni said when he talked about The Mandalorian, I think season 2 or whatever. And he said that. And now I'm like wondering, is it actually warranted here? I mean, you have to use these characters somehow, right? And I think it was epic the way how they used it. Another criticism, again, maybe it's like too much fan service. I don't know. I'm like fine with that. I'm like a little kid when I see these things. I'm like, oh my god, wow, awesome. So I don't mind. But thinking critically, maybe perhaps they could have finessed it a little bit more. I don't know. I think episode 5 was great, but maybe earlier, the way how they brought about certain characters, especially Hera, she just felt like useless a lot of times. She tried her best, but it always came to no avail. And I remember Sabine. I think for a lot of people, Sabine just keeps taking massive L's or whatever. A common Sabine L. I think the last episode was a little goofy in terms of the fighting. Not the hand-on-hand stuff like with Morgan and Ahsoka or like everybody else. That's fine. When it came to those Death Troopers or whatever you call them, sometimes I think I seen one of them trip too, which is a little funny. Okay, there was a guy like this. There was something about the fighting where it just seemed a little too cumbersome, and I think that you don't really get that too much in the show because Ahsoka's doing so much like with her lightsabers rather than blasting at people. So I think Sabine's choreography for the most part also is a little lackluster here and there. It just seems a little stupid because it's hard because they're shooting at her and then she has this lightsaber and she decides to kick some guy and like run. I'm like, why?
And she just pulls out her blasters. So
yeah,
like wake up, you're going to use the lightsaber, you're going to use your blaster. Right?
And it's really slow. It's just slow how she approached it. But that and also the well, yeah,
probably for me, I mean, those are good points too. I'd probably say the weakest part of the show was actually the New Republic parts. They're just so stupid in my opinion. Like, I did like the ship designs though. I did like the new kind of like not Star Destroyers, but they're like the New Republic ships. They're new cruisers. Yeah. I thought those were cool designs.
Oh, from the first episode or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, they're much more fleshed out here than the sequels, which I like. And they're more believable here than the sequels. But it's just like when you watch them, it kind of makes sense why they fucked up in the sequels, if you know what I mean. It's like they're so bureaucratic. They're basically what they were before the Empire. It's like they just debate, but they don't really do anything, right? And then it's just like they end up fucking up because they overlook a lot of things. And now you have Thrawn, who's already back in the galaxy. This could have been avoided like 3 episodes ago, but I guess they're just stupid. I don't know.
Well, that's probably intentional though. Maybe that's like intentional and just the story writing. It's, they're that's how they are. What I like about Star Wars is rebels are cool, but nobody knows their names. So when we get these actors and we actually get some insights in some of these characters, for example, like Rogue One, they could yell, I'm a rebel, all they want. Or they could be deaf and they cannot speak, but their actions speak louder than their actual words. And I go back to the spiritual thing, like their spirit, their grit. And so perhaps maybe that's just intentional. It's like, yeah, the New Republic, they're not that great. And we've seen some of this in Mandalorian season 3. New Republic, not that great. They deserve to be wiped out, like hail Palpatine or whatever.
Burning in hell.
Yeah. But at the same time, too, in the sequels, a lot of people did come in clutch to save, like there's like beautiful moments like that in Star Wars. And I know of course we're not going to get all the time we need to see that in Ahsoka, because it has to be really focused in on what they're trying to tell. What's there? What do you think actually? I mean, we talked a lot about this, but if you had to sum it in one word, say one word, sum up Ahsoka. What does Ahsoka mean in one word? The show. One word.
One word. Wow. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, one word.
I feel like legacy. I'm clinging toward legacy. Something about it. It's like, because Ahsoka is a part of this legacy. If you think about it, you have Anakin, you have Obi-Wan, and I keep seeing memes fly around the internet of, her lineage as a Jedi, right? And now she has Sabine as her apprentice. So now she's passing on the torch, pass on what you have learned, right?
Sure.
And not even just legacy of Ahsoka. I mean, just like I said earlier, like legacy of the Rebels crew, right? Ezra. That's why I feel like what you said about Kanan, I think was actually true. I feel like they should have, I mean, they mentioned him, of course, but I feel like they should have just thrown something in there. Maybe he has like a final word with Ezra, because this is also Ezra's story too, right? The whole point was to find Ezra, as well as stop Thrawn. But yeah, I feel like the Ahsoka and Sabine thing was the core of this show. Even as Sabine, I feel like, what you said with some of her action scenes were kind of mid, and sometimes like she was kind of annoying. But I think you kind of have to have a flawed character to make it seem like, and that's why people didn't like Rey, because she had like everything like pretty much given to her, right? With Sabine, it's kind of like she kind of has to earn it in a way. So that's probably why she has to make mistakes, right? But then what does she do? She comes back, and then she, of course, in the last episode, she discovers her power, right? So now probably we'll see her become more of a Jedi and grow more as a character, right?
Yeah, those are good points. For sure, legacy. Maybe perhaps it's unfair to bring it down to just one or two, maybe one word. I'd say legacy as well. I also say, I don't know, that's actually really hard. I asked a really tough question. Yeah. If I had to, okay, I'd do 3 words to make it easier. Legacy, new beginnings, or something like that.
That's a good one.
Or live, laugh, love.
Oh, now I know I heard it. Shit.
So what were your favorite parts from this series, though?
Oh my god, there were so many. I feel like the obvious answer is episode 5 with Anakin. Just seeing Clone Wars in live action, that was a shock to my system. I knew we were gonna get something with Anakin. I didn't expect to see a whole Clone Wars themed episode. That's how much Filoni loves his fans. And I feel like bringing Anakin back in here was also kind of, in my personal opinion, an apology, because we didn't get to see him in Rise of Skywalker. So perhaps he probably heard the fans and was like, well, let's just not just give Anakin as a cameo. Let's just like show Anakin, right? Because it makes sense. Like he's her master. They didn't get any closure, right? The last time she saw him was when he was Darth Vader and she had to fight him. So to see him in this show and see Hayden's, acting chops back, I thought was perfect. But there was a lot of great episodes. I mean, even just the first episode, and just seeing Sabine's introduction, just seeing where these characters were from Rebels to now, I think it was so perfect, and it made sense for their stories. Seeing Thrawn back in episode, I think it was episode 6.
Yeah. Yep.
Just his reemergence, right? Because they kept, building on this bigger threat, and when you reintroduce Thrawn, especially in live action, you have to make it seem like he's worth all this effort that they're trying to prevent, right? So seeing him in his reemergence episode, I thought was phenomenal. Seeing the Dark Troopers or the Death Troopers.
There's a lot of favorite parts. Shit.
So many. That's what I say. It's hard to nitpick.
Well, the problem is, the reason why I'm asking is because now I'm starting to grow skeptical because
skeptical in what way?
I can't review something like when we reviewed Sound of Freedom. The sentimental review for that was, okay, it's a beautiful message, 10 out of 10, but the actual execution is like a 4 out of 10 or something like that. So that's how I'm becoming kind of skeptical, because I'm thinking maybe it's actually not all that it's cut out to be. Because when I was watching Obi-Wan, I was like, damn, this shit's lit, except Reva. But there were like so many great parts, you know? And it's trying to think critically, what is the absolute downfall? Let's say this right here, season 1. I'm going to tell you right now, it's a fact that this is a 5 out of 10 show. Why would it be a 5 out of 10? No, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying let's just pretend it's 5 out of 10. Why would you say it's a 5 out of 10?
That's hard, because I feel like even if I'm like, comparing...
Forget about the cool touchbacks, like callbacks to stuff. Forget about that. Like, just watching the show. Like, you never watched Star Wars before and you're about to judge this. Why is it 5 out of 10?
I'm thinking of in comparison to the other shows that we've seen. I feel like, honestly, this has been the most consistent story.
In what way?
Because so we had, what was the best show for you so far?
So far, honestly, I'd say probably Andor in the sense of story, like realistic.
Too. Yeah. But even Andor had its flaws too, so I feel like it was really slow up to a point, and then maybe kind of like progress. With this show, it's hard because, but yeah, that's true. What you're saying, it's like the sentimental stuff kind of impede your criticism,
right? Perhaps we come across a pickle because I don't want Star Wars to be fan service all the time. Filoni's good at that, but perhaps Filoni kind of fell off just a little bit, because he that plan he had, that's why Mandalorian season 1 was so great. That plan he said, he fucking forgot about that plan long time ago. He knew by then his life was long gone.
Well, perhaps certain episodes did kind of feel like filler. There was the episode where, but even like some of the filler episodes, I like the actors. But okay, so we had the one episode where they were on the planet with the star map, and then Ahsoka, and it was just basically them just like flying through space. And then we had, I think it was episode 6 or 7, and it was just like them like running with the little turtle people. Those probably were like the weaker moments. But I feel like even this show, there's just something about like the character moments that actually like feel like you care about them. I don't know. Do you feel differently?
No, but listen, I feel like that because they feel like a part of my family. I watched these characters since I was young, and now they just have fresh faces. So, and of course, there's a lot of pressure for the actors to convey that they are actually those legacy characters. So, and I believe them. But the problem is, I'm trying to think, well, is that really all it takes? Is that what our media has come to? Is reliant on what came before? We have games doing remasters and remakes because of nostalgia alone, right? There's people talking about high school all the time, like they didn't accomplish enough. So, and I think about this stuff because this show, for some reason, has me thinking a lot about legacy and fate. And then it kind of drips into my own life, and I think about my own memories, and it's like, oh wow, this is so meta. Well, and then so
probably the crutch of this show would probably be the fan service then.
Well, that's wrong though. But what I was gonna say was, do you see how much I'm talking and I'm saying all this shit, and we've been going back and forth? Yeah, there's a reason for that. There must be something wrong. So that's why I'm trying to get down And if you guys are watching, I hope you guys maybe could see what we're saying. And also, I don't want you guys to think that we weren't being honest about our previous reviews or it's just biases. This is like just fresh out of watching it. This is what we're reviewing it. And for the most part, it's a great experience overall. But as critics, if you were to deconstruct something fairly, not because how much money it has, it doesn't matter. You have to show respect where respect's due. And it's like, honestly, if I were to rate this season now, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. And maybe in parts, I'd give like probably 3 points, 2 or 4 points because of the legacy stuff, which is actually really sad. But I think the message is really important because that's true art. It's the message. Conveyed through a series is really difficult because you could be really tiresome. But I think they found refreshing ways to keep showcasing that message in a different light and show different perspectives. Like, for example, Bail and Grand Admiral Thoron. And for a franchise, also, they introduced new elements where, okay, this is great. And for the business as well, business speaking, this is just great what they can do. I think 7 out of 10 is fine. What about you?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned. No, that's a perfect perspective on it because what we're saying now could totally change in like 3 months.
It's like Obi-Wan.
Right. No, exactly. No, that's exactly it. Like looking back on some shows that we've reviewed, right? My mindset is like, well, you know, it was probably cool when we watched it, but looking back on it, perhaps it may have been flawed. And, you know, we have to be fair too as critics too. So no, that's a perfect assessment. What you just said. I would probably give this series, I give it an 8 out of 10. For me, an 8 gives it did its job and it did it beautifully. A 9 or 10 would be like it went above and beyond. Yeah. Maybe in 3 months, if I still enjoy it, I'll probably give it 9 out of 10. But I probably feel like it's a strong 8. It's a beautiful show. I think honestly, and I'm not being biased, I think it's actually one of the higher rated Star Wars shows. I think it was just very consistent in its delivery. I think, of course, style wise, it was beautiful. I think, like you said, it added a lot of great new elements and a lot of refreshing new elements. I think the characters weren't wasted potential. I'm glad to see like some of them, you know, could be reoccurring characters for bigger thread lines. And I think it was overall a great homage to stuff we've seen already.
And I think that's fair. And maybe it's meta. There's different perspectives on it, just like Balin and Ahsoka. There's different perspectives on it.
I missed the idea of it. But
that's what it was. I swear it's meta. I swear to God, it's so meta.
That's how I feel like looking back at all the shows we watched. Like, I missed the idea.
Of it. That's us watching Hello Tomorrow. Right. We're like, he's trying to sell the dream. I missed the idea.
I missed the idea.
The idea of it. Well, yeah, and I hope you guys could come to your own conclusion. Really, I try to sometimes, I mean, we don't sometimes get too many people commenting, but I kind of like to think of these reviews sometimes as a workshop, especially with my co-host. So I like to think of different aspects of something that we're reviewing and to give it like a really thorough analysis. And I think every show really deserves that. So for sure, Dylan gave it an 8 out of 10. I give it a 7 out of 10. And that is our review for season 1 of Ahsoka. Dylan, take us away.
Well, guys, let us know what you think because we love hearing from you and what your opinions are. But if you stuck around to the end of the review, we appreciate it. We love you guys. We hope you'll check out our other Ahsoka reviews from beginning to end and maybe some of our other Star Wars content because we love Star Wars. It's a great franchise. Good or bad, take it as you will. Sometimes it's hit or miss, but for sure, I think this show will definitely be memorable. But guys, we have a lot of content planned for this month. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button. Check out other videos. Let us know what you want to see us review. But until then, may the Force be with you guys. And thanks for having lunch with us.
May the Force be with you. See you guys.